Welcome to the Secret Keepers podcast with your host, Kareen Zutleger. Join us as we uncover the hidden thoughts, stories, and moments that help bring light to the healing power of truth and examine how silence can affect us mentally, physically, and spiritually. We'll also share profound stories, interviews, and transformative narratives to help release ourselves from the hidden and step into healing towards inner peace, joy, and fulfillment. Now, here's your healing strategist and host, Kareen.
Welcome to the Secret Keepers podcast. Today, my guest is Emilie Lan, and I am going to have Emilie tell her a little bit about herself.
Thank you for having me. I am Emilie, and I live in the very most northern part of Upper Michigan, near the shore of Lake Superior, which is my place I go for calming and peace. I am a mom to now 3 young men. My youngest just turned 18. My oldest is married. And so I am a retired special education teacher. I did 25 years in the area of special education. I'm an author. I am a photographer of nature. I say I don't like to photograph people because in nature, I don't have to have people smile or worry about what the picture is going to look like. In my free time, I love to read and watch movies and play board and card games. My kids and I have been playing a lot of cribbage lately that I learned from a man at a nursing home that my grandma was a part of in her later years in life. I love family. I have a connection to God. I'm in a committed relationship. My partner and I are going to be celebrating 4 years come September. So that's a little bit about.
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love it so much. And it sounds like family is very important to you. And I definitely know that from a heart space, you and I resonate with that. And so thank you for being here. I'm so happy to have you here. Emilie, what I'd like to know and have you talk about with the audience is just share a little bit about your journey. The things that maybe you were holding close to you that you're hoping to open up to and share with the world now.
Um, my story really begins um, back in 2010. My family calls it the year from hell. My best friend at the age of 35 passed away really unexpectedly. That year, my aunt got diagnosed with a brain tumor and passed away. We had lots and lots of grief, lots and lots of loss. And at that time, my husband and I had been married. We were also 35 years old and had a lot of conversations about what you do when somebody passes away. And you're 35, you're young, you've got kids. And at that time, I was doing a lot of writing. I've always been somebody that journals and processed a lot of the grief that way. Started working with a therapist, going through some grief, healing, that kind of thing. And little did I know that a lot of that was prepping me for my husband to then pass away at the age of 42, extremely unexpectedly. I left for work in the morning on a Tuesday, and by that afternoon, he was gone. He had had surgery on Monday. It was routine surgery. We thought everything was fine. Obviously, I would not have gone to work if I had thought there was going to be something. His mom had stopped by, asked him if he wanted some lunch. He said chicken nuggets sounded good. She had left my house to drive 4 to 5 minutes away to pick up lunch. And by the time she got back, he was gone. So very sudden, very unexpected. And it'll be 7 years in December since he passed away. And a lot has happened in those almost 7 years. And I feel that it's really helped me discover who I am, who God has brought me here to be, what my soul purpose is. I am really working on using my voice. I feel like my voice has always been on paper. I have been somebody I kept a diary when I was little. I'd love to go back and find those and see what I wrote about when I was 8, 9, 10, 12, 15. I keep multiple journals. I probably have 14 of them going at any time with different types of things, different styles, but it's been a way that I've always communicated with myself, of writing things out, processing through things. And when Steve passed away, I started really having to make decisions. And it was not something I felt I was good at. It was something that we did together.
Yeah.
We started dating in high school. He was the only person I had ever dated. And so I felt like we were parents to 3 young kids at that time. I had a senior,
Mm,
a sophomore, and a fifth grader. And we were making decisions about how we spent our money, what we did to go on vacation, what we did on weekends. We had decided where to buy our house, where our kids were going to go to school,
sure.
simplistic decisions, what we're going to have for dinner, um, all of that. And now I was thrown into figuring all of that out on my own. Every parenting decision,
Yeah.
every household decision, every financial decision. And it was hard. And I reached
Yeah.
out. I did a lot of writing. I knew from when Tacey had died that I needed to seek therapy right away. I relied on my
That's
faith.
good.
I had an
Hmm.
amazing faith community. I had a deep connection with God. And I wrote a lot. Um, I wrote letters to Steve. I wrote letters to God. I wrote letters to myself. I wrote letters about different emotions. I wrote
Yeah.
lyrics to songs. I and I kept a lot of it in.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm. Okay,
but really
so
having
let's stop there. Let's stop there. Just to because I want to just kind of circle back to just some of the things that you had said, um, for things that you had done, right? So what you were recognizing was that you were keeping a lot of this in, even though you had the tools, like you knew you need to go to therapy and you were writing some things. There were certain things that you were keeping in. And how was that affecting you? Like, was it affecting you physically, emotionally? Was it affecting you on a spiritual level? Like, how was like keeping it in affecting you?
I think it affected me everywhere. It was affecting me physically and mentally. I was battling depression. I was on antidepressants for a while. I was struggling with work. Um, I did end up taking some time off of work because I felt like I was physically in my classroom, but I wasn't teaching. I wasn't able to
Sure.
connect with the students. I was struggling as a parent to like
Sure.
help my children who were also grieving. Um, I was struggling with spiritually knowing um, why this was happening, how I was supposed to go on, how to do these pieces. Um, my health was affected. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't sleeping well. Um,
Sure.
all of those pieces. But
Okay.
I also knew that I had to keep going. I had
Sure.
kids that were relying on me. I had a job that was relying on me that I needed to be going to. And I knew there was a reason. I knew
Mm,
that there was a purpose for this, that I could make it through it. I had gone through lots of grief before with
sure.
grandparents, my birth father, my best friend, my aunt, like lots of people.
Yeah.
And so I knew I could get through it, but I wasn't sure how that was going to happen.
You said with very distinct certainty that you knew there was a purpose for this. Tell me a little bit more about that.
My faith tells me that everything has a reason, that I'm put here for a reason. We're all put here for a reason. You meet people for a reason. You go through things for a reason. Um, People pass away for a reason at these times. You're connected with somebody for a certain length of time or for a certain amount of time in your life. You learn things for a reason and that you don't always know um, why things happen or what that is. And I think some things we're not meant to find out. I think experiences we had when we were little help you then connect with somebody later on in your life. Like I was saying, I think some of the conversations we had after my friend had passed away led us to some of the decisions that we made in our marriage, both financially and personally, and things that we talked about, that then, set me up for some successes then when Steve did pass away. That then led me to be able to make, further decisions with retirement and some of those pieces, that there were purposes for those. And now to be able to share my story and to guide others to see that there is a healing side to grief. There can be joy. You can move forward, and it doesn't mean you've forgotten. It doesn't mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean that there's not moments of grief, that it's not over, that it's not done. But I think that's that purpose. That was my purpose to be here, was to always share my story. And now learning to bring that out into the world, not just to have it in my notebooks on my shelf in my bedroom.
Oh, I love that. I love that too, that you recognize that grief is one of those things. It people think it's like it's linear or something. It's like, okay, so I start on this stage of grief, and then I go through here, and then I end up here. And what you and I've both learned on the journey of grief is that it ebbs and flows. Like the loss is always there. I always feel it in my heart, but the focus shifts, right? I get to continue to live this life, and you get to continue to share everything that you learned. And back to where you and Steve learned from the death of your friend, and the two of you set up certain things for you to be financially in a position to retire, at a young age, and for you to move in the direction that you're moving, so that you can share everything that you've learned on this journey. And that, I think, is just so beautiful, because you have this heart of, to want to share that, to really help others heal in that grief process, and not just heal in the grief process, but to find their voice and to bring their voice out into the world. And I love how you're doing that. So please share with the community how it is that you are, because I know you went from writing to now you're stepping into other ways that you express that writing.
So it was probably about 2 years after Steve had died. I was working with my therapist, and one day I said to her, I just want somebody to tell me that it's okay to be okay. And she said, well, yes, it is. And I said, I know, but I think like society always says that it's okay if you're grieving 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And it's okay if, you can't go back to work and you can't do all of these pieces. And I believe that that is true. And I still, almost 7 years later, definitely have my moments of grief and my days that it's really hard. And I anticipate having those triggers and all of those pieces. But I wanted to be okay. I wanted to have the good days, and I wanted to be able to feel joy and to share good memories and to have the laughs and the smiles and to have a song come on the radio and to be able to sing about it and remember that, oh, that was from high school, and that was from prom, or that was when we were first married, or I wanted those like good memories. And that's what I wanted to be. And I wanted to be able to tell stories about him to people so that he wasn't forgotten. And I didn't want it to be sourful and angry and sad and not be able to get out of bed. And I don't think that's what Steve would have wanted. And so I went back and took all of my journal rights for those first 2 years and turned it into a book. And I published it because I wanted others to hear that it was okay to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's what the title is It's Okay to Be Okay, Finding Joy Through Grief. And I added scripture and I was just raw. And for me, it was it was really healing to go back and read those journals and to see that raw grief from that second day after he was gone, and to see you talked about like the different stages that were, originally developed for people dying, not people grieving, and that shift and the spiral of how you go through those, and you're back and forth and back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
and to see that the happiness that was coming and the light that was coming and the joy that I could see and the great memories we had had and the relationship that we had had and how we were as a couple and partners and parents and all of that, and
Mm-hmm.
to just share that. And then I was able to write a second book because at about the 2.5 year mark, I realized I was 47 and or 45. And I thought, what am I going to do? My kids are getting older. They're turning into adults and living the life that we wanted them to be living and growing up and
Mm-hmm.
moving on. And my oldest was getting married and things were moving on. And what was I going to do? Live in this house by myself for 40 some years? And so I started thinking about dating and moving forward, and what would that mean? And would somebody want to be with a widow? Would somebody want to be with a single mom? And what did that mean about me? And what would everybody think about that? And
Yeah.
what would people think if I moved forward? And would it be too quick? Would it be
Mm-hmm.
too soon? And what would people think if I was online dating? And what if I met somebody that wasn't local? And just all of those questions. And so I processed through lots of that and kind of started doing it on the side where nobody really knew. And then I talked to my kids a little bit, and they were just like, well, as
Mm-hmm.
long as you don't use this app and as long as you don't do this. And
Yeah.
they just really wanted me to be happy. And
Yeah.
they didn't,
Yes.
they were old enough and they weren't tiny. And I think it would have been different if
Mm-hmm.
they were little, but like putting that out there of like, this is what I need to do for me. And I needed to be okay with it. And it was kind of funny because I um said I sent out a text to like my parents and sisters and Steve's parents and sister. And I just sent out a group text to everybody. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about starting to date again, like whatever. And then we had a family gathering and everybody was there. And my sister's like, I win the bet. And I was like, what do you mean you win the bet? And she said, oh, my husband and I were kind of betting on if you would like start dating somebody. And then my dad's like, oh yeah, we were talking. And I'm like, okay, everybody's been having these side conversations about this. And
Mm.
like, and everybody was fine with it. And my in-laws, Steve's parents are like, we just want you to be happy. And
Yes.
this is what Steve would want for you. And it was like, like affirming that like this, I chose to do it with that worry. And then it was still confirmed, but that stepping out onto my own of like, I'm going to do this. And this is what feels right for me. And having to make those decisions on my own. And it's taken a long time to get to the point where I am now starting to really feel comfortable in making even simplistic decisions about what do I want to eat and is that okay? And yes, I am worthy of those decisions, and I'm worthy because
Right.
God put me here for this purpose, and I'm worthy of
Yeah.
sharing my story
Yes.
because it's my story and I have feelings about it, and also with the hope that maybe somebody else can find some healing in it or some guidance to then speak
Mm-hmm.
their own.
Yeah. Maybe just even if they resonate with just a little chunk of it. I mean, you went from, you going through grief, through counseling, to seeing a therapist, to now, shifting into being coached. Because, we move from that direction of, we go through this healing process, and then now we're looking to like living in this present moment and moving into the future. And that's where, coaching comes in. We want to look at helping you build that future. And I hear so much. It's so rich that everything that you've experienced. Um, and I hear you really learning to trust yourself and your inner guidance, your direct connection with God, listening to that, what is it that my soul needs? And that, um, how does that look? It's going to be different, right? Because everybody's here for a very different reason. We all have a different reason for being here, but yet you were learning, I am worthy, I am capable, right? I get to trust myself in that, these are the things I really want for me. And you were so concerned about, how, this was going to look or appear to these other people. And all they really wanted for you was to be happy.
Yeah.
And in the end of the day, all that really matters is what you really wanted and what you knew at your soul level, the direction that you needed to move. So I know that you really do some fun, interesting work. You've started something, I believe it's called soul collaging. And I would love for you to tell the audience all about that.
So, many years ago, my mom actually attended a women's workshop retreat, and they were introduced to this process called soul collage. And she came back and she's like, "Oh, this is really neat process that you intuitively just find these images and you make these like 5x7, 5x8 cards, and you just make these images." And so I started making these cards many years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I didn't really know what I was doing other than it was super fun. You just take magazines, you
Hmm.
take these pictures, you assemble them, and I didn't really know anything else. And last fall, she said, "Oh, I got reconnected with this soul collage." And I was like, "With what?" And she's like, "Remember those cards you've been making?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I make them here and there." And she said, "There's going to be a workshop that you can get trained to be a facilitator." And so it's a patented, trademark, registered company. And in order to teach it, you have to go through this process, but you have to take this introductory workshop first. And so we said, "Okay, it's over Zoom. We'll take this workshop." And during the workshop, I learned there was so much more to it. And in the process, learned that every card that you make is a part of your soul. And
Mm.
so throughout making it, you're actually making your own deck of these soul collage cards, and every one of them can belong to a different suit. And so you have cards that are truly your soul. And so you might have your 9-year-old self, or your you as a mother, or me as a teacher. They're truly me. And then you can have other cards that are like the archetypes. And so you might have the mother, or Mother Earth, or
Hmm.
grief. And then you might have cards like I have one for my husband, and I have a couple cards for him. I have one of him as a father, and one of him as my husband, my connection to him. And then so you have all these different cards, and then you can actually do journaling with them, which was the part that I found super exciting, because everything in my life is writing and journaling and that
Hmm.
connection. And so you can meet the cards and find out who they are. And so I have a card that is that voice card. And so the
Okay.
images that are put on it, every card has like a background, and then it has a being. So it has something that can speak, and it's often a person, like a human being,
Hmm.
or an animal, and then that card can speak to you. And so it's a different variation of speaking to your soul, and hearing that voice. And so then you can ask it questions of, what do I need to process today? What do I need to know about myself? What permission do I need? And then that card can then speak to you through journaling. And you can pull multiple cards. You can do lots of different things, similar to what you would do with like a tarot deck or an oracle card, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But it's completely personalized.
Sure.
Like, you can't share them with other people. You can't do readings with them for anybody, because
Hmm.
every card that you create is based on you. And they're totally intuitive. Like, you're not, as you flip through magazines, you're pulling out things that your intuition says, "Oh, yep, you need that head of lettuce. Oh, you need this picture of this person walking on a beach. Oh, you need this beautiful dining room." And then you put
Hmm.
that all together and you're like, "Oh, I wonder what this is." And then when you sit with it, and there's meditation to it, there's art to it, there's creativity, but there is absolutely no skill, no judgment, no critic. All of those pieces are just sent out the window, and you just intuitively build these, and then you build that soul connection. And so it's just, everything I do has that writing soul connection. And so I do
Sure.
journaling, and I do bullet journaling, which is kind of productivity, but I do so much with self-care and connection to God and affirmations and health and all of that. And then the soul collage piece, I had this big umbrella of writing, and then there's all these components with it. And through that soul collage, I've connected with that inner voice, that guidance,
Mhm.
those pieces of who I've been all along the way, and how that's all formed my soul and finding that purpose of who I am. And I think going through these significant losses at really young age, like,
Mhm.
being
Yeah.
42 and being a widow and suddenly a single parent of three, young kids, I was forced to have to use my voice and make
Mhm.
decisions. And I think that was the purpose, was because I wasn't doing that before that. I wasn't speaking up and making those decisions on my own. And I was a teacher, but I was following rules, and not rules that I
Sure.
necessarily agreed with. And I
Mm.
was doing things with my children that we as parents were, working on together, but there were pieces of that I didn't agree with. And we were doing financial things that I'm now being like, that's really what I wanted to be
Yeah.
doing. And there's still things. The other day I had to order crushed concrete, and not something I ever thought I would ever know about or want to know about. And I was very angry as I moved 4 tons of concrete, angry that I have to make these decisions. But I
Okay.
did make the decision, and I could make that decision, and
Good.
I made it, and I moved it. But that empowerment of making those decisions and trusting that I can make decisions has
Yes,
been
you
really
can.
powerful in the last, like, looking back of the version of me 10 years ago, 7 years ago, even last year, is just been has been really phenomenal.
Yeah, and what I love, Emily, and what I hear you saying is you made a choice to keep living. You made that decision. And, often, in grief and when we suffer severe losses, I too have, had great losses. I lost my dad. I lost my brother. I lost my mom. I lost my best friend. I mean, the list is long of people that were really important to me. And just recently, my dog. And we could stay in that grief, but you heard a calling to step out of it and to serve and use your voice and to help others to heal it. And I want to take just a minute to celebrate that with you because it's so important, to acknowledge the fact that that really was a choice, right? It was that decision that you made, and now you're doing things that you never thought you could do. And that was a whole mindset shift for you, right? Some, these beliefs that you always had to, maybe default to, you know, somebody else's decision or somebody else's wants for you. And now you're taking a look at, like, what do I want for me?
It,
What is best for me? What can I do? I can do everything and anything that I choose to do. And I think that's amazing. And I love the soul voice, the soul collage. And I want to know, in your healing journey, was that a big piece for you?
yes, because realizing that, so I feel like I've integrated multiple pieces, doing some parts therapy, doing the soul collage, card making, journaling, that process, doing coaching, doing my own journaling, having my faith piece, um, all of those, looking at the fact that I often hear people say, oh, we're like onions, and you peel away all these layers.
Mhm.
And a friend of mine, Zoe, said, no, I don't think we're onions. We're like heads of garlic.
Mm.
Because if you think about an onion, you peel away that layer and you're done with it. And that's not really what happens. you're actually all these little heads of these little cloves of garlic all stuck together, and you're with these three cloves, and then this one over here, and then this couple over here, and then these couple over here, and then the next day you're kind of like working on two of those same ones from yesterday, but oh, then you've got this other one that you're working on. And so I feel like looking at those different parts of going back and saying, oh, from when I was really little, I have this experience. And then, oh, and that kind of ties into this thing from when I was a teenager. And oh, but then there's that other part from when I was in college. Oh, all three of those things are kind of this similar energy and component and piece. And I was feeling this same emotion during all of those. And oh, this piece from when I was connected with this person and this person and this person is all that same kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
now looking back from all throughout my childhood, are there all these pieces of like having choices? And when did I have choices? And when did I not speak my truth? And I don't feel like I was ever told to like be quiet, don't speak up. I
Oh,
don't feel
sure.
like I had
Hmm.
that piece, but I
Hmm.
also don't feel like I was told, what do you want?
Mm.
What happens in, like, I feel like going back and looking at that, and so through soul collage I can make a visual representation of all of those pieces. And I don't have visions in my head. I have that aphantasia where I don't see anything. So if you tell me to
Yeah.
close my eyes and think of a cinnamon roll, I got nothing for
Got
you.
nothing.
I could tell you a
Same.
whole story about cinnamon rolls for 4 days. I could talk about
Yeah.
cinnamon rolls and
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
grandma and all these pieces, but I don't see a cinnamon roll. I also don't smell it or
Right.
taste it. Um,
Mm.
and so I think because then I can, if I need to, I could make a soul collage card around cinnamon rolls and then go back and have that with my grandma and the time I spent with her and how much she cared for me. So I think by having the soul collage cards and being able to work with them, and even just the creation of them allows me to narrow it down and look at a certain part and see where I was at that time, what was I experiencing, and what voice does that part of me need to say? What what needs to be said? What did I need to hear?
Yeah.
And so I'm working on a new book right now. I'm in the fun-filled proofreading editing part, um, which is not my favorite part, but writing letters to and from my soul of things that from the moment of conception to yesterday, what did I need to hear from people and myself? And what did I need to say at all of these different points? And having a card. I remember when I was very young, sitting on the steps at my grandma's house on a Friday night, not knowing if I should stay or go home. And I lived 3 blocks from my grandma's house. This was not like oh, I'm only at my grandma's for 4 days a year and I should really stay here
Yeah.
and visit because I don't get to, I probably saw my grandma every day for 10 years of my life. And I
Hmm.
would sit on the steps and I would sob, trying to decide if I should go home or stay, because I didn't want my grandma to feel like I didn't want to stay. And I didn't want my mom to
Oh,
feel like
yeah.
I shouldn't go home. And I just wanted somebody to tell me, stay or go, pick one for me.
Mm.
And now, and I went, and I still have access to my grandparents' house. And I went and I took a picture of that stairwell, and I put a picture of like my shadow, took a picture of my
Okay.
shadow outside, and I put that on there, and I made my own soul collage with my own images. And to go back and to be able to write a letter to my little 7-year-old self sitting on that steps of what did I need to hear? And a letter from my
I love it.
mom telling me, you can stay. I'm fine to go home without you. I'll just
Yeah.
go to sleep. And it's great that
Yeah.
you stay here. Like, I'm good. And a letter from
I
my
love it.
grandma. You can go home and you can come back
Mhm.
tomorrow and spend tomorrow night. Or if you stay, here's what we'll do. And
Yeah.
then from me, of like, somebody just tell me what to do. I don't want to make a decision. Like being able to do that, but having that card as that focus to be able to see that has been, and I have multiple grief cards and I have
Sure.
all these different points that as I'm making them, sometimes I'm like, I don't know what this is going to be. And other times I know right away what it's going to be as I'm putting those images down. And it's giving me that a voice from a different perspective while it's still being me.
Yeah. And you allow it. You allow the
You
process.
just allow it. Yep. You don't
and,
judge it, and you're putting stuff down, and you're not trying to say like, what is this going to look like when it's done? Is this centered? Is it here? Do these colors? Nope. You just put it down and make it, and it is what it is.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And it's going to be
and
perfect when it's made.
Okay. I love that. And I love that it is the perfection of your own, right? It doesn't need to be, it's not for anybody else. It's all about you. And I know that, so please just tell the listeners like how they can find you. We're going to put it in the show notes, but you do these soul collage workshops. So, and then also, how they can find your books, if that's possible. Yeah, and how they can find you in general if they want to connect with you.
I am on Facebook and Instagram. I don't do as much with Instagram, but I have posts there. It's Emilie Lan. My Emily's with an IE. So I am on Facebook and Instagram. I have a Facebook group called Calm Water Writers, and every day there's a journaling prompt, and then there's other resources. I also have a group on Facebook called Grief and Joy Coexist, where I do some posts about healing and grief and different resources and sometimes memes and things like that that people can share. I have a website called calmwaterwriting.com, and there's all kinds of different things. There's resources, workbooks, links to my books, links to a blog, links to my podcast, all kinds of different things. Somebody's working on rebranding some of it to make it a different layout and things. But I do have a website, calmwaterwriting.com. And then if you go to Amazon, the easiest way to find my books is to search my name. And I have an author page, and it'll bring up the first book I wrote called It's Okay to Be Okay, Finding Joy Through Grief. The second one is It's Okay to Love Again. And it's a memoir of my journal rights, all about that process of deciding I was worthy enough to put myself out into the dating world, and the relationship of finding my partner now. So it's a little bit of a love story, but mostly that memoir of self-discovery. Of finding that. And then I also have a book of a collection of miracles and a book of poetry. And then I'm in the process of working on another book. I've got some journals and things like that. And then I host workshops, courses, and then I offer one-on-ones for bullet journaling, traditional long form journaling, learning how to journal, and soul collage. So anything connected to writing and journaling, and then related to grief and healing, because I truly do believe that you can heal from the grieving process and live your life with just moments of grief, not being stuck in that deep grieving. So if you were to give the audience one tip, what would you tell them in moving in that direction? Trust the inner voice that you hear, because you are important. Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for coming on to The Secret Keepers and for sharing your heart and your soul with us. I do adore you. I love the things that you're doing, and the fact that that this audience will be able to reach out to you and share in all of the wonderful things that you have to offer. So thanks again. Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Secret Keepers podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a like and follow so we can invite you back. And if you just want more, visit CorrineZuleger.com. Remember, you're not alone.